Hello and welcome. Excuse the noise on the roof, that's the rain. I've got this Boston Duane Junior back on the bench, and one of the reasons why I've got this back on the bench is because one of the subscribers to the channel, who sends me a lot of comments and some very useful information, pointed out that this 6Z4 rectifier is a bit naff. So I found a data sheet for it. Indeed it is naff. The maximum smoothing you can have on it is about 7 or 8 microfarad. We've got a 22 on here. They're cheap and they're not easy to find an alternative replacement should it go wrong, other than another cheap 6Z4. That tube is punching above its weight on this amplifier, the current draw and everything, so it's just a cheap tube they've shoved in there. So I'm going to swap this for an EZ80. That was the suggestion made by the subscriber to the channel, Gooden, and that's what I'm going to do. So I'm going to take this out of the chassis and I'm going to remove that socket, and then I'm going to drill it out, because that's a 7-pin, remember. In fact, if we have that, see if we can get that tube out. I'm trying to do it one-handed while I'm holding the amp up so you can see it. There we go. We just have that out, and you can see, if you look at this socket as well, somebody actually pointed out that this socket were cracked, and I don't think it is cracked. I think that is just a cheap socket made of 2 parts, and I didn't actually spot that when I was doing the video. I actually went back and had a look, and indeed there is a problem with that. It was right. So we've got a cheap jack socket there, really. We don't really trust that, and we've got a tube that really is is not up to the job of running this amplifier. Now remember, this amp's virtually brand new and hardly been used, so there's a fair bet that when this amp's been used for any given time, this tube is going to fail. Now I've also changed the Chinese 6v6 and found a nice Brymer 6v6 to go in there. So he's gone in, and we're going to find something to get rid of this Chinese 12AX7. I don't know what these tubes are like. Is that a PS vein? Something? I'm just trying to look at that. I need another pair of glasses to view that. The old eyes aren't very good. And one. So I don't know, but I'm going to have a look at that. But anyway, I'm on for changing that for something decent. And you can see where this is going, can't you? You know, it's you can really see where this is going. As well, because I've already been offering the board up and thinking, shall I change the board as well? And I'm up for it, because if the thing is, if I change this board and that tube, and I tidy up the heater filament wires and all the rest of it, this is a serious bit of kit then. Another thing I found as well on this amp, and when I put this amp back together, there wasn't a problem with it. But after a day or two, and if I gently screw this bolt in the side, which is holding it, which I've had to release, you'll see why. So look at this bolt as it comes in, and that bolt was touching that terminal and grounding the cathode on the 12AX7 on one of the stages, on the first stage actually. So that's not good, is it? So that needs a coat of looking at as well. We need to do something with that. We need to either find a smaller bolt, or if we're changing this board, we just need to make sure that it doesn't get close to the turrets, and it probably won't, because of course those contacts on there are hanging over the edge where these turrets are not. So that's what we're going to do. So we're definitely going to change this tube. And I think when I've changed this tube, I'm going to run it up again, and I'm going to just see how much more efficient that this has been by adding this EZ80. So I've just checked the bias when I put this 6v6 in, and that's running at about just shy of 10 watts, 9 point something. I've got 282 volts plate to cathode on the B plus on the HT, and I've got 300 volts on the first node. We may get a little bit more plate voltage out of this amp, which if we do may push this up, maybe 10 or 11 watts. Most champs are biased at 12 watts, so hopefully we should get a bit more out of this tube. Now an EZ80 is a reasonable tube. If you look at a Blackstar Artisan 15, for example, we had one of those on the bench early part of the year. The rectifier tube in an Artisan 15 is an EZ80, so it's more than capable of running a single-ended amp, so I think we'll do well with that. So I'm going to take this out of the case, I'm going to remove that tube socket, and then I'm going to drill it out, and then I'm going to put a 9-pin socket in there, wire it up for the EZ80. Right, we've fitted this EZ80 here, and we don't have a deal more plate voltage, to be honest. We've got probably about another 6 volts it's given us. I don't think we're going to get much more out of it. It's not even a case of getting more plate voltage, really. It's a case of making this more reliable. Now, one thing that it has allowed us to do, so if you listen now, you can hear this has got quite a hum. So you can hear that. But if I take a 22 microfarad capacitor, now the one that's in there is 22. I checked that the data sheet again for that 6Z4, and the maximum smoothing you could have was 8 microfarad. So that was already well over, and you shouldn't have that over because eventually it will pop the tube. But with a EZ80 we can have 47 microfarad. What I'm going to do now, if I parallel this 22 here, this nice Vichy, if I parallel it, we'll have 44 microfarads. So what we've got now is this 22 microfarad capacitor, and we're going to add it on. This is ground, by the way, that I've got here. If you're going to do this, don't do it the other way. Make sure you're putting ground on and not positive. Put positive on first. So we pop that on, get a bit of a spark. Makes it much quieter. Now we can get away with that 47. Imagine if someone had come along and put a 47 on that 6Z4 rectifier when it only manages 8 microfarad. And we'd already got 22, which was more than double. So you can see that's pretty quiet. I mean, there's a little bit of hum, but it's you know, it's a single-ended amp. So that's what this amp needs. It needs a 47 microfarad cap to go in there. I'm not going to parallel a 22 across in it because it just looks untidy, and it's not the way to do it. We need to get a proper 47 in there. So we turn off, and we will just take those off. Now remember that this capacitor is still charged, so be very careful doing this, and you just need to discharge it on something. In actual fact, we're switching it off, there were no charge in it, but always check. If you take it off before you switch it off, it will be charged, but that's dangerous. So always switch off, let the cap drain, take it off, and check before you touch the terminals that there's no charge in it, or it'll give you a little nip. Right, so that pretty much sorts this amp out. We've got this tube in, which is the RCA, and that is dissipating at the moment. How this is set out at 9 watts. If we take 5% off of the screens, we're 9 watts or a shade over. So we could reduce that 470 and just get a little more out of it, but I don't think we're going to bother. And the only thing we're going to do now is we will replace that 470, that 47 microfarad capacitor. And I don't think I've got one, you know. I've got a 30. Well, actually, I have got some, but they're a bit large. Well, that'll go in there, and they're also, that's an F&T, which I've actually bought for another project. So will that go in there? See, the problem is I've got to be careful because we fitted that jack socket there because it was the only it was the most logical place to put it, and the cable was already going through there, so it made sense, and there was nowhere else to fit it, so we've got to be a bit careful there. But I think we could get away with that. I think we'll just put some insulation on it, just to be doubly certain on that. But I think we'll be okay. Doesn't come out much more, but a bit. So we've got that one, and that's at 500 volts. So I mean, we don't need a 500 volt working capacitor for this. We only need one about 350. That power transformer set has got 250 volts AC on there. It's got a leaflet on there telling you a sticker. So if we go 250 and we times that by 1.414, I don't quite know what I did then. So 250 times 1.414 is 353 volts, so we need a 400 volt one. That's just not quite enough, because that's, of course, when we switch it on, and there's that, of course, is for when we switch it on. The voltage will be at 350. We'd probably get away with 350, but beyond the limit 353. But we'll put a 400 in at least in there, or 450. These are 450, and then we've got plenty of leeway. And then, of course, the tubes draw that down. Right, so apart from that, this amp's done. Now, as regards the Fender Champ turret board, which I have here, will this go in? I've got a 10k resistor on it for. Will this go in borderline, as you can see? And it's all right getting it to go in, but we've got to get clearance on these tube terminals, on these socket terminals, and we may not. And it also, the other problem is that this flexes inwards. Should this amp somehow get damaged and pushed, and this gets pushed together, if we need to know there's enough clearance. And the only way I can find that out is to remove those, is to remove all of this and offer this up, and I'm not prepared to do that because it's only 50-50 whether it's going to fit in. And also, this chassis is really awkward to work in. It's really narrow inside. So that's where we are with this. I'm going to search around, see if I can find a 47 microfarad capacitor. If not, then I'm afraid we'll have to order one. And we seem to be ordering a lot of parts lately, and we've got a lot of things waiting for parts, but that's just how it goes sometimes. You can't keep everything on the shelf. Right, I'm going to go and have a search. Right, I'm afraid the only thing I've got are these radials, 47 at 450, 105C. But given this amp is, you know, got a pretty cheapish board in there, and these capacitors are nothing special anyway, I think I'm going to make one of those fit in there. I wouldn't normally, and certainly if this was a proper Fender Champ, there's no way I'd be putting that in there. Right, there we are. We've installed that. I've put some glue in there to hold them firm, and the other two. I should have probably done that last time because they were a bit floaty. So sorted that out. Right, we'll get this back in its cabinet and we'll have a listen. Right, we've got this Boston Duane Junior back in its case. So let's just have a bit of a run through what we've done. So we swapped that rubbishy 6Z4 for an EZ80. We swapped the Chinese 6V6 for an RCA 6V6, which is good. And I've also got rid of that PS vane tube. The pins on that were dreadful. They had trouble even getting it back in the socket. They were so flimsy. And I've put a Mazda 12X7 in there, ECC83. So we've had a full set of tubes go in this that are decent. Can't beat the RCAs for the output tube. And we've also changed that 22 to a 47 microfarad on the first node, and that's quietened this down no end. This thing is loud. I can't remember how loud this amp was before before we've done all these changes to it, but I don't remember it being that loud. Yeah, this thing is loud. Today. So there we have it, the Boston Duane Junior with a few mods. It's a shame we couldn't have put that board in it, and I was very tempted to have a go, but I just don't quite think there's enough room. And to be honest, I've not really worked on a really old vintage Fender Champ, so I can't really look at that chassis and say whether or not it's smaller than a normal Champ, but it looks it to me, and it would have been a very difficult thing to fit. But nonetheless, we've improved this amp. We've got better tubes in it, and we've got better smoothing on it. It's quieter. Still some issues with the grounding, but it's pretty good. So that'll do it for this one. Thanks for watching. You all take care, and I'll see you all in another video. Bye bye for now.